This is a list that I found from GoBankingRates.com, and they said this is what people feel as they get into retirement, things that they assume are going to be about their retirement, and many times they are wrong. There's 7 things here. Number 1, you put a plan together for them into their 90s or 95, and they go, I ain't going to live that long. What are you doing here? And the fact of the matter is you might live into your 90s. You'll stay healthy. Your expenses will decrease. Markets will stay the same as they are now, right? They never change. Inflation will always stay low. It is now. Why won't it for the next 20 years? If I wanted to go back to work, I could do that, right? And you'll get an inheritance. So 7 things that people think are going to happen in their retirement, but maybe not. Greg, have you seen these? I got to imagine you have.
I have. Before I dive in, Randy, what's your biggest assumption that you miss on? Do you have an assumption in life? Like, for me, it's gas in the car. I always think I have a full tank of gas. I've ran out of gas more than any human being alive. You think it happens?
Are you serious?
Your car does run out of gas. In case anybody's wondering.
You're on the side of the road. You're calling your wife and you're telling her you're out of gas.
My parents were like, "Greg, how many times can you run out of gas?" I'm like, I just assume that it just keeps going. I think E's kind of a suggestion that you should eventually fill it up.
The fact that there's a gauge right in front of you. Okay, all right.
Nothing, Randy? No assumptions in your life?
Maybe that I'm going to get better at golf and I always stay the same or get worse. Maybe that's what it is at this point.
You know, I think these assumptions make sense in terms of retirement. So a lot of them, I think, you know, you assume that times are going to be tight and that you have to be in this enhanced budget. That's not on this, but I think a lot of times people, I mean, Phil, they have this fear. They assume that they have to be on this fixed income where they're very, you know, I guess frugal. You assume that you have to be frugal in retirement is something that I would add to this list. I think the list is a good list. I think, you know, people always, you know, don't necessarily believe that they're going to live in their 90s, or alternatively, people believe they're going to be 120. There's no middle ground. But it really affects how you live your life and how you choose your retirement planners and how you build your finances, Randy. These things, are, you know, pretty damning. And I think one of the things that maybe we can jump in on are, you always think the market's going to go up. People seem to always forget that the market goes down once in a while. And because since 2011, 12, we've been kicking butt here, Phil. I mean, it's been a unbelievable run where people just assume the stock market goes up 10% every year. And that can get you in some hot water.
Yeah, certainly can. I think the idea of the one that stood out was the markets will stay constant. I mean, you say that and we've grown through the greatest decade the market's ever had. But the decade before this, that one wasn't so hot. In fact, the market didn't make any money from 2000 to 2012 because it went down, up, down, and then back up. So I think that's one of the big misconceptions. I'd say if I were to add to the list overall, kind of cheating, this is a really macro view, is the plan, the planner, the approach that got us to retirement is going to work for us to get us through retirement. We see it all the time where there's very little change or a different approach, but you have to. Life's changed so much. I mean, income's gone, health starts to change, even more people in your family too. So maybe travel and family time become more important. I think the idea that we can approach retirement with the same plan that we got into it, it just is a flawed logic.
Greg, you've said it many times that one of the difficult days of your job is when a couple is a client and they've been going along just fine, and then all of a sudden they call for a meeting and they come in and they have had a bad diagnosis. Something has happened in their life, and that means their whole financial life is going to change as well. It could be a cancer diagnosis, it could be a dementia diagnosis, it could be any of these things, and it's an awful thing, but it is a fact of life that we have to build into a plan to make sure that as these things do take place, we've got some strategies in place.
Yeah, that's right, Randy. I mean, everyone who's listened to the show, or if you haven't, being an estate planning attorney for about a decade, you know, that was our life. Our life was dealing with people's worst days. You know, you hate to say that, but that's really your job. Your job is to be there for families when times are tough and to plan for when times are tough. And that could be a nursing home, a health emergency, or it could be a death. I mean, that's really what estate planning really comes down to, is planning for those big moments and not only navigating them, but then ensuring that going forward, your wishes are executed. So when we think of these assumptions that, you know, your will's enough, or this document's going to be enough, or this plan's enough, I love what Phil said, because we see it all the time from the financial side. You know, you have the legal issues, but you also have the financial issues, and the financial issues are very, you know, black and white, where, of course, when you're in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s and you're socking money away, you've got 20 or 30 years for the stock market to do up and down stuff, right? But when you get to your 50s and your 60s, and now this money isn't like, I'm going to grow money. This is like, spend me money. And if you have spend me money, in those buckets that are volatile, that could completely change how you live your retirement. If you're sitting there and the stock market goes down, we see people all the time say, oh, we're not going to do a trip this year. And that's sad when you think you only have, 20, 25 years of fun retirement time to do things. You're bailing on 10, it could be 5%, 10%, 20% of the years because of the stock market. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And our roadmap for retirement, Randy, does a lot to build confidence to spend. That's really the goal. The roadmap of retirement isn't a financial tool. It's a life tool. It's a retirement tool that says, if we take care of these 4 big risks, and we put, your money in things that are predictable and, allow you to do all the things you want in retirement, you will do those things in retirement. That should be the, by definition of a plan. We want to plan to do the things you want to do. And a lot of times I think the hubris of the industry actually is building plans for the financial advisors' goals, which is, I want to beat the S&P by 2%. And I want to do this and I want to do that. And I might not always do it, but that's my goal. And it's like, well, that has nothing to do with Jack and Jill. That they want to go out to dinner with their family, once a week, and they want to go to Florida a couple months a year. And they want to golf, and they want to do these things. So let's build plans about, executing those. And that's where the roadmap for retirement came from. Sitting on the attorney side of the table, seeing all these plans not get built correctly, motivated us to build Golden Reserve, to build a roadmap that focused on what we believe were the most important aspects of retirement and some of the biggest risks of retirement. And that really hopefully gives people that second look, that second opinion to say, you know what, are the big issues of retirement really being addressed? And I'm going to be able to navigate the next 20, 30 years and doing everything I want with more confidence. And that's, why we do it, Randy. That's why we don't charge for it.
And this, as I look at this list, I think this could be your what if list. A lot of people will sit down with a retirement planner and say, I don't know what to ask. I've saved this money. Now what? Well, this is a what if list. What if I live into my 90s? What if I don't stay healthy? What if my expenses increase instead of decrease? You could take this list and say, let's make a plan for the what ifs. Now, the reason that this show is called Fire Your Financial Advisor is we have some difficulties with the way that this particular system works or doesn't work, as the case may be. A lot of people write into places like the Market Watch advisor column with things like this. I'm paying my advisor 1%, but the only communication I get with my advisor is an invoice. I want to regain sole control of my finances and get this person out without having to talk to him about it. Is this possible? So, Phil, as you sit down with people and they go, I'm not so sure about my present advisor. I think that, I think we're going to have to break up. Is that a difficult situation? Do they have to face them face to face and deal with this? Or can it be done differently?
Yeah, the nice part is you have a lot of options here. You don't have to talk to your advisor. You can move everything. It's your money. You've got the freedom to do what you want with it. You can move that money to somewhere else without that conversation with the advisor. Now, I will tell you, they may not communicate with you outside of that invoice, but one time they typically will call you is when they see that money leave their management account that they're charging that 1% on. So you can't expect a phone call from them. Obviously, attempts to fight and win that money back because they see that $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 paycheck go away. But you don't have to. There's no communication needed. But the best part, before even like making the decision on if you should fire your advisor or not, is you can get a review to see what am I actually paying without your advisor finding out. That's the big one is, okay, I think I'm paying him 1%, but let's really dig in it. Am I paying him 1% and I'm paying another 1% for my investments? That's why we do our fee analysis, and no advisor has to see that we ran a fee analysis. We just need a copy of statements. People can black out account numbers, all of the information. We don't care about that. But once we know how you're invested, we can tell you not just what are you paying your financial advisor, but also the investments that they picked. What are you paying for those?
And Greg, is that a surprise to a lot of people when they see that number? And maybe if they go to their advisor and confront them with that, is that, hey, dude, I am paying you $10,000, $15,000 a year, and I don't think I'm getting the value for what I'm paying.
Yeah, I think a lot of emotions happen because when people, are confronted with this, a lot of times they view their financial advisor as a friend. And it's because it's a relationship-driven position, right? That's how people view their financial advisor. It's like, oh, Chip would never do that. I've known Chip forever. We go out and we vacation. We go to games. we have coffee once a month, and they view this person as their friend. And it's hard to address that maybe this friend's part of a bad system. I don't think it necessarily means Chip's a bad person. I don't think Chip has to be a jerk. He might be a jerk. He might be a bad person, but that doesn't mean he has to be. And I think sometimes these systems are set up just in a way that it's not built for the retiree. It's built for the financial advisor. And because they've had kind of a monopoly over it, this has allowed them to charge and do whatever they wanted without much transparency. The investment fees are always a surprise. Most people don't understand it because investment fees aren't on statements. You will not see your mutual fund statements with a expense ratio broken out. Here's how much you're paying in fees for all the investments we sold you. You won't see it on your 401k. That's why we have to have the software that breaks it down. Same with variable annuities. You can't find that unless you go to the prospectus and do the math yourself. And then ironically, what they do is they net them off the gains or they add them to the losses. So at the end of the day, it's really confusing to understand what your investment fees are. And then when it goes to the actual financial advisor, 1%, what accounts is this being applied to? Is it applied to all my accounts? Is it applied to my managed accounts? Which accounts, are they taking money out of? So to back into that number is even more confusing. So this whole system is a big, knotted mess. Our fee analysis undoes the knot. And we just basically say, you're paying X dollars a year. And I think that's what most people want to know is like, what am I paying? Am I paying, well, you're paying 1%, 0.5%, 0.7. Okay, what does that mean? I have no idea how that ties to all these accounts. We do the math for you. We show you what your annual cost is, which is the cost you should be focused on. And then you can decide, is this worth it? Are the investments performing well enough to justify the cost? Is my financial advisor doing enough to justify the cost? And if he's not, what other options are out there for me, both from an investment standpoint and from a guide perspective of who can help me guide my way through retirement? Am I getting tax? Am I getting legal? Am I getting vacation? Am I getting spending encouragement, income? What am I actually getting from a way of services out there? Because don't kid yourselves, folks, this is the most important financial decision you will make your entire life. Let's make sure that you kick the right tires, that you actually break down all the options and treat your finances like a business. Our roadmap for retirement is that first business analysis that we give people to show them here's where you stand in fees, taxes, long-term care, market. All of those things get broken out to show you exactly where you're at. And then you can decide what to do with that information.
Yeah, there's lots of times in your life where you go, hey, I like this better than I like this. So you change. It could be a service that you're paying for. It could be anything. Why would it not be the same in your retirement money? And so I hate confrontation. You probably hate confrontation. I don't like it either. Can you fire your financial advisor without a lot of confrontation? Let's figure that out. I think we can. Give us a call. Give us a look at our website, getyourroadmap.com. And we talk a lot about moving money from a 401k over to your own IRA, a conversion. That way you get yourself out of the tax wash. There's a lot of advantages there. Well, there's a guy who writes into Market Watch, and he is doing that. And he's been pulling out about 10% of his IRA each year and moving it over from his IRA and moving it over to a Roth. But the market just keeps going up. So as he's taking money out, the money keeps going up. And he says, I can't get ahead of this. He says, I feel like I'm on a treadmill. Should I stop doing this? I would think it's a good thing, but I see his point. He feels like he'll never get done with these conversions and continuing to pay the tax.
Oh,
so Phil,
poor retiree making too much money.
I get it. But Phil, I mean, this is a good problem to have, but I kind of see that I don't want to keep writing out checks to the government each and every year like this. What do you say?
Yeah, well, first off, kudos to him for even having a plan, right? Most folks, when it comes to taxes and especially on the IRA, if they don't need the money, they just leave it in there. And then they're leaving a tax bomb for down the road, right? Mm-hmm. So first off, thumbs up, you've got a plan. Also, I mean, taking 10% of the IRA, now the market's been making 20%. So yes, you're breaking even, but it's not always going to do that. 10% may be the right number. This is a really personalized side of planning though, right? It depends on your income. Depends on how much you have in your IRA, on how much you should take out. But the hard part is getting that advice. And that's probably why he turned to the internet to try and get some answers is he's not getting it from anybody. Because most financial advisors, they're not talking about it, right? He probably calls his guy and he doesn't have an answer for him because he doesn't do taxes. Either it's too hard, too complicated, or the fact that if he does recommend him converting more, that advisor is sacrificing more of his fee. Mm-hmm. So he's incentivized not to give advice on this. So he goes to the advisor, doesn't get anything. So, you know what? I'm going to call my CPA. He's always been a good accountant. And he's great at last year's tax returns, but never talks future, never talks 5, 10, 15 years out. So you're stuck in this middle world where, you know, the accountants don't help you because they're looking backwards. The advisor doesn't talk taxes at all. So then you turn to the internet and hope that somebody has the answer for you. But this is a huge part of retirement that you do need to have a plan for. This debt is potentially one of the biggest debts you'll have in retirement.
So, Greg, this is it's a good problem to have, I guess. But at the same time, is he worried about something he shouldn't be worried about?
Yeah, Randy, these are what I like to call good problems, right? Like there's bad problems in retirement and good problems. And, you know, bad retirement's a prognosis that could change your life. Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, you know, you could have not enough money in the accounts to cover the bills. Those are bad problems. Good problems is trying to figure out how to minimize your tax exposure on your IRA. And there's a lot of ways you can do it, a lot of ways to skin the cat. As Phil mentioned, we think this is a huge opportunity to save real dollars. Because when you put it in perspective, you know, being that it could be one of your largest liabilities in retirement, you're looking at $1 million IRA. Let's say you pay, you know, you're converting it and your effective tax rate's roughly 15%. That means over the course of your IRA, you're going to pay roughly $150,000 in taxes, which doesn't sound awesome, but it is a debt owed to Uncle Sam. It's going to happen one way or the other. And let's say you don't plan for it. This gentleman's not planning for it, and a spouse passes. And we don't know if he's married or not, but let's assume he is. And all of a sudden his spouse bumps up to 20 or 25% rates. Well, shoot, that's $250,000. Or what happens if it goes to his kids and they take it all out? Well, shoot, that could be 30, 35, 40% effective tax rates if they take it all over 1 year. Well, that's $300,000 or $400,000. So we were talking not about thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of potential swings based on the size of your IRA, your tax brackets. These are real possibilities that we see every day at Golden Reserve across the country. So yes, it's a real issue. Yes, it's very important to it's very important to plan for this. Now, I don't think you should be losing sleep over it. I think this is one of the things where make sure that your retirement plan includes this piece because it's so important. And it's not just converting it to a Roth. You can just take the money out too, right? Like at this point, if you're in retirement and spending it, the idea of converting to a Roth doesn't make a ton of sense because you're not going to have any compounding, right? You're going to actually just take it out and spend it. So you're not going to get a lot of time to get the benefit of the compounding nature of a Roth. But if you're not going to spend it, then sure, put it in a Roth. That's extra tax-free growth in the future. So yes, Randy, I think the IRA tax planning is a huge piece. That's why, you know, Golden Reserve's partnered and has, you know, a team of CPAs that build our tax plans for our clients to ensure that they see it. We do it for at no charge for everyone that comes in for the first time, just so they can see a rough illustration of what their tax plan could look like. And mostly, you know, Phil, 7 to 10 years is usually what we see a lot of, right? Regardless of the size.
In that ballpark. So 10%, maybe a little more than 10%. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're looking at this guy's probably right on it, right? He's, you know, it's like you're probably looking at 10 years if you have a decent sized IRA, and then there's some IRA fluctuations where you may have to make some pivots. But the cool part about this tool is not that we build it and you put it, you know, in a binder that you never see again. You know, if you're a client of Golden Reserve, we update it every year. You know, the team of CPAs look at it, we update it, we put this, you know, and we execute it. So we make sure that you're making the draws correctly, and we can be there to be a sounding board. Because here's the reality, Randy. There is no right answer. This is the hard part where people don't understand, because if you're bullish on tax rates or bearish, it will affect what you do. If you think tax rates are going to rise for sure, well, you may take out more. You may say, I'm going to take out 15% this year because I think the next administration is going to raise rates. Well, that's the game we're playing, because the second rates go up, that completely affects the entire tax plan. So a lot of this is an emotional, risk-driven decision that's very personal. It's up to you. There's no CPA, retirement planner, or person that can give you the crystal ball. So you're going to have to make the decision based on the information you have of, how do you want to get this out? Some people are like, I want to get this out as soon as possible. Okay, then we'll be more aggressive. You may pay a couple of more percentages, but it'll come out faster. And maybe it'll grow compounding with the Roth faster. I don't know. These are the things that why it's important to have a retirement planner and not just try to operate off an Excel sheet you built by yourself at your house and you're just going off it on your own trying to figure it out. It's more complicated than that. You usually want to collaborate, get some more, you know, minds involved when it comes to, like Phil mentioned, this could be hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax savings if you play your cards right, pending the size of your IRA.
Well, this is one of the reasons that Golden Reserve is built the way it is, because as Phil said so well, your CPA may be just looking back, and your financial advisor may not be qualified or even want to do this because it affects their bottom line. At Golden Reserve, we have the people in place that deal with this every day, and they're talking to each other, and we're working on your behalf together. You don't have to chase all over town and get your opinion from one person and your opinion from the other person and then try to get them to talk. Give us a look on our website, getyourroadmap.com. Now, when we talk about income in retirement, there's Social Security, there's building your 401k into a paycheck, there's a pension, and then we'll often talk about something called dividend-paying stocks. It's a different kind of a stock. It's not just a stock that you watch go up and down. It actually pays you. Well, they have the decision to pay you or not to pay you and how much they pay you. If you happen to own company stock in Dow, that's one of the ones that is giving a dividend of late, but just recently, Dow cut their dividend in half. Now, I wanted to ask you, Phil, is this something that you're seeing as a trend?
Kind of a rough earnings report came out this last quarter, so I know a lot of companies are under the gun, but there were 12 large cap stocks alone that decreased their dividend in July, actually. So pretty decent number, 65 year to date, just large cap. So this is certainly something that's happening, but it kind of is always like this in this market cycle. And where we hear people talk about dividend stocks the most is, oh, I'm not too worried about my risk because I have dividend stocks to pay my income. Mm-hmm. Well, we have to consider this. Is that dividend going to go down? Is it always going to be there? Is the income that we're relying on volatile, and could it drop? And I've heard for response to that, hey, Phil, no. I'm in a fund that has increasing dividends. All the companies in them have always paid increasing dividends. Then we're down to two things. Like one, either that dividend just isn't too high, maybe 3-4%, which is kind of similar to the S&P as a whole, not great. Or two, there's two ways that investments make money, right? One way is a dividend. This is like an interest payment every month, every quarter, every year, depends on the stock. But it's an interest payment that is guaranteed for that quarter and then may go down. The second is actual just appreciation, meaning I bought this stock for $10, its price went up to $20, and I sold it, I made $10. Oftentimes, you get one or the other, you don't get both. Mm-hmm. So when you pick these dividend-paying stocks, you might get regular interest, and that's helpful, but you don't get the same appreciation. Example would be the S&P is up 20%. Your dividend stock is up 4% and paid a 4% dividend. You actually lost. The market's up 20, you made 8%, and you're still taking on the full risk of the stock market. So when we're using these dividend stocks, there's certainly still risks to it. The dividend can go down. We may lose to the market as a whole. It's oftentimes not a replacement of an income plan, I'd say.
When it comes to dividends too, I think the tax treatment gets overlooked, where when you think about it from a growth standpoint, if you're holding stocks for long periods of time, you're subject to, based on how long you hold them, if you hold them over a year, capital gains. That capital gains rate a lot of times can be less than the typical income rates, depending on where your income is and all that fun stuff. But when you're getting this, just like when you get, savings account interest or, CD interest and now, dividend interest, this is all just treated as ordinary income, right? This is coming in and being added to the bucket of all your tax brackets. So I think it's a consideration of what's the after-tax return of both approaches, because it's not apples to apples. Now that's getting a little complicated, and I think we're going kind of veering right off, what Phil hit, where I think was a beautiful way to illustrate, not always what just because it happened yesterday doesn't mean it happens tomorrow. And I think you got to be careful if you're just burying your head in the sand saying, I'm a dividend recap or I'm a dividend person. And all of a sudden those dividends shrink. And then also the value of, if the dividends shrink, what's going to happen to the value of the stock probably?
Yeah, it's going to go down.
Goes down. It's going to probably go down if it's paying less dividends. So I think these are huge considerations of being careful. If nothing else, guys, don't fall asleep at the wheel. We call it our market risk report because it breaks down the, actual percentage of your assets that could go backwards. I think that's important just to understand your internal risk of your investments. I think it's very, very, important in retirement because you don't have the same time for it to win back. But also we pair it with an income forecast that shows you how much money you need to do everything you want in retirement, all the fun stuff. And, factoring those dividends or other sources of income, you can really kind of play both off each other and come up with maybe a little bit better of a recipe for your retirement with less risk, but you still get to do the same amount of stuff. I think that's what most people are looking for, is more predictable ways of doing this. I think that's why they go to dividend driven, large cap, approaches. But I think there's other alternatives out there that they should explore that could be a nice replacement with less risk if it makes sense for that family, Randy. And all of those things are addressed when we build that roadmap for retirement for anybody that comes in that first visit.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on right now. I mean, we had probably one of the biggest weeks of numbers that came back. There was unemployment. There was an interest rate decision. There was all sorts. GDP came out. There was a lot going on last week.
There was, jobs report came out. Randy, correct me if I'm wrong. It was pretty flat. I think that was kind of a I think it was a little disappointment.
They rejiggered the numbers and then they fired the person who sent out the numbers. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's been kind of a circus lately.
I don't like that number. You're fired.
It's been quiet. It's been a quiet layoff. I know a lot of people that are talking about people being laid off very quietly. They call it quiet layoff, right? Season where it seems like very systematically you've been losing a lot of execs and high dollar positions have been being, at least in the Midwest, we hear a lot of quiet layoffs happening. The Fed held serve. They did not, decrease the interest rates, which I think every period that they come up every couple months, that's a big pressure from the administration and from the market. And they held basically the logic being, as everyone can assume, uncertainty about tariffs could cause more inflation. So interest rates have held again, which I think is probably the right move. I think it's healthy to kind of, things are kind of working and, inflation's kind of mellowed out and flatlined. So I think that's probably a good thing, as much as people would like to have a little bit cheaper money, companies and other, the real estate market and all these things. But at the end of the day, you gotta, things are kind of working right now in ways that, I think everyone's pretty happy. Stock market's raging this year again, almost at all-time highs. It went down, it bounced back. Tariff uncertainty continues to be, one of the big economic drivers across the world. You kind of don't have a deal with, you've cut deals with the EU and Japan and South Korea. Now you're trying to get things done here closer to home. Canada and Mexico, India, I know are some of the big open trade partners that are still kind of under fire to this last August 1st deadline. I think Mexico may have gotten a little bit of an extension too. But it's uncertainty, right? The market doesn't like it, so it reacted poorly last week, and then it bounced back. I think on Monday it went up like 1% in like the first opening hour, which is kind of goofy of how the stock market kind of overreacts and then course corrects. So right now, whether you're a fan of the administration or not, like the tariffs seem to be, I think everyone's begrudgingly saying it's kind of working. You're getting deals done. You're getting stability. And the thing is, whether or not it's a good deal or bad deal, Randy and I talk about this all the time, it's this certainty of a deal, right? Whether it's the perfect deal or what is doing economically, to me, it's stability, it's predictability. And once you get some of those in place, when the last 2 or 3 countries end up getting done, I think we'll focus on something else. I think this will be one of those things where you can kind of move forward away from the global uncertainty. And, we don't really dive into politics. We assume that everyone's exhausted by the time they go through everything else. But,
It's so true.
I think this is a huge revenue stream that, is hopefully paying off some debt. From my perspective, I'm just a fiscal guy. I just want to do the numbers. And, it was billions and billions coming in more than last year already based on the tariffs. And I don't know if those have long-term bad effects or what happens, but it is nice to see some money going towards the debt. So we'll see how that goes and if that holds course. But right now it looks like, the market still, Randy, is looking to try to beat all-time records.
We're hanging in there, as we say. All right. So this is a good time for Phil to be in the room here. I love the fact that when you come and join us here, Phil, this was an interesting article, and it was in Barron's. And I don't know if I agree with this. The concept, maybe. All right. So Wayne Gretzky, I grew up in Minnesota. I played hockey, into high school, and I was a Wayne Gretzky fan. And the one thing that I always admired about Gretzky, I know he scored, as many goals as anybody did for an awfully long time. He now is in second place as far as scoring record is concerned, but he knew where everybody on the ice was, and he was able to make passes. He made everybody around him look good, kind of like Magic Johnson did in basketball. And they say Wayne Gretzky was proactive, not reactive. And we need to be the same way with our investments. And I'm like, yeah, but we've just gone through a lot of assumptions that people make that, how can you know where the market's going? How can you know where your health is going? How can you know where your taxes are going? I don't think we can. How can we rationalize that and still be proactive with our retirement planning?
Yeah, I think it's being proactive with the controllables, right? That's what Wayne Gretzky's doing. He's controlling the controllables. And I'll tell you right now, I mean, it's not like he's that much better than everybody else from just thinking forward, right? I'm pretty sure everybody on the ice was thinking forward, but what I guarantee he did was practice harder, maybe practice longer. And that's, I think, some of our secret sauce here within the Golden Reserve realm is that we've been doing this for 15 years now, right? And when a retiree, I'm going to give it a number, 99% of the time, probably when they retire, it's their first time retiring.
That's fair.
So it's like, well, we should probably work with somebody that's worked with thousands of people and handled everything, right? We realized early, like Greg said, we started as an estate planning and elder law firm, realized there were errors on the financial side. So what do? We go build a financial team that focuses strictly for retirees on their finances. And then we know taxes are an issue. So we start the tax side of things and have a team of CPAs that focus on tax planning for retirees. So you start to get this team full of a lot of people that are very well practiced, but also very well practiced in that defined area. And that's kind of the winning recipe for retirement. It's like, it's your first time retiring. Probably shouldn't go on this alone. You know, the homemade spreadsheets, the Googling, the bogleheads, like probably not the best way to go. I would lean on decades and decades and decades of experience from a team that's done it for thousands of retirees, not just the one.
Greg, it's hard to know what's coming, but that's the whole idea behind a plan. You know, what did Mike Tyson say? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, that makes sense. And many retirees do, in a sense, get punched in the face by markets, by taxes, by health, by fees, all the things that we talk about.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And I appreciate that, you know, they're a little bit apprehensive because if you think about it, let's put ourselves in their shoes. They've worked for 30 years and they have their life savings. And now they have to interview people that they have no subject matter expertise really on to be responsible for their life savings, which is freaking scary, right? It's like, all right, I got to make the largest financial decision of my life. I'm a school teacher. My husband's a factory worker. I'm using my parents, by the way. And, you know, they're going through this process of trying to figure out, all right, well, the only indicator that I have is, did they make me any money? And it's really not the right indicator because that financial advisor doesn't make them any money. The stock market does. Mm-hmm. So if the stock market's roaring, you could have an amazing money manager that just happens to take your money over when the market is having a bad turn. And now you're like, this guy stinks. You're like, actually, he lost less than everybody else, but he lost money. So in your mind, he stinks. It's like my dad, God love Big John. You hear me talking about the show, but he's like, hey, you know, we were doing this tax plan. He's like, I don't know about these accountants. I'm like, what's the matter, Dad? He's like, we paid a lot in taxes. And I'm like, well, I'll take a look at it. And Dad, Mom had an inheritance last year from Grandpa, right? Like, it's like one of those things where you're just kind of laughing. Like, of course you paid more in taxes, but that's how you can't blame them. It's overwhelming. So what we do here that I think is a little different is we try to, you know, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. We try to make things more palatable through the roadmap. I think we try to take these very complicated topics and make them human speak versus these graphs and these charts that no one ever understands, and just say, here's what we think people care about. And here's what we break it down. Here's where we think most people should be, because that's where they want to get through and navigate retirement. And that's a combination of market risk, long-term care protection, you know, tax planning, fee analysis. Don't pay too much, you know, make sure you have that plan. And maybe people that ideologically share your views of, like, maybe the goal of retirement is to spend your money, not to invest it. And I think that's the distinction of how we're different than most financial places, where we're so focused because we charge a flat fee. It allows us to be on the same side of the table as our clients, where it's like, you could spend $200,000 or $10 and we get paid the same amount. And I think that allows people to have a different type of conversation that normally doesn't get to happen with a typical financial advising relationship. Because as Phil has mentioned, if you're getting charged a 1% fee, which is how most people get charged, or some variation, 1.5, 1.25, 0.9, whatever, and all of a sudden you spend some money, that financial advisor takes a pay cut. It's inarguable. So, you know, they're more likely to probably be like, ooh, what about, you know, inflation, market risk, all these things. They're probably talking people out of doing more things, we would assume, subconsciously or consciously, because they take a pay cut every time their client does it. So that's why the whole system doesn't work. Why do you have a system where the whole idea of retirement is to spend your money, but the person that's in charge gets a pay cut every time you spend your money.
You said it many times. We don't have a crystal ball. If your advisor tells you he knows where the market is going, he's lying or she's lying. They just don't know. They do not know. And what we need to do is say, yeah, we don't know the day you're going to die, but we have to figure out what your Social Security is, how it's going to work within your particular program and your particular plan. We don't know what your health is going to be. We don't know what taxes are going to be, but we can put all of these options into your plan so that if inflation does go up, we've got some kind of a plan for it. GetYourRoadmap.com is our website. GetYourRoadmap.com. When I think about finances and I think about my parents, I remember this. My dad literally would take envelopes every week and he would stuff it with cash, and he would put one for the mortgage and one for church and one for the utility bill. And there was always one for fishing. He would always have an envelope for fishing. And that's what we did our fishing trips on. That is an old fashioned way of going about it. None of you may do that anymore, but apparently it's now making a comeback, and they call it cash stuffing, because when you handle cash, you kind of know exactly where your money is going. So Phil, let me ask you about that. I mean, first of all, there's things that we used to have that may be coming back. I remember skinny ties. I don't know if I want that to come back. Parachute pants, painter pants. I remember I wore painter pants. I wore saddle shoes. Oh my God, there's a lot of stuff that I don't want to see come back. But anything in your life that you wore? Did you ever have a mullet in your life? Let me ask you that.
Never had a mullet, never attempted for it. I am a fan of mustaches coming back. My beard grows long. I'll shave a mustache for a weekend.
Okay.
I'm a fan of that. But no, I when you think about it, like a lot of those things, not great. But this reminds me of the Greatest Generation, right? The survivors of the Great Depression. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of things they did that I think should come back. I mean, there's a reason they're the Greatest Generation, right? They knew how to work. They knew how to save and make sacrifices. So I don't think this is such a bad thing if that's the generation I think of. And but this is going to be a pretty pivotal point for cash and cash equivalents, I think. We had this run here where interest rates have been decent. I mean, it's not like it was the 70s when you're making 18% on a CD, but we are in a place where we've made 4 or 5% on safe accounts, money markets, CDs. Those things have been paying well. And there is a lot of talk, and it sounds like we're leading towards a world where those interest rates start to go down. Mm-hmm. And whether you're a fan of it or not, the reality is we've been able to make decent money on some of the safe liquid money. It may be changing soon. And so now it's kind of that mindset. Let's think longer term. And when we think of safety, right, maybe not that 6-month CD, but it's that 5 months or 5-year CD, thinking that, hey, if we're going to get into that world where interest rates go down, but it can be a danger if we're over allocated into cash, right? We're probably long-term not going to keep up with inflation and all those things. So we're actually losing money in time. We need to have that money still growing for us, just approaching it the right way. What can we do from a safe standpoint, whether that's bonds, fixed annuities, CDs, whatever that tool is, that's still going to pace or beat inflation and still make us money, but keep it safe.
Greg, is there a place where you'll see people walk through the door where we're talking about cash stuffing here, that they have stuffed too much cash in a certain area of their life? Have they relied too much on the 401k? Have they relied too much on putting cash into the bank because they're scared of the market? Is there a place that you see as overstuffed?
You know what I'm going to say. You always ask me these questions. The 401ks are overstuffed, right? Like, people have got excited in the 80s when they came out in the 90s, and obviously they put all their money in the pre-tax account. And the reason I'm not saying I'm anti 401k. That's silly. If you have a match from your employer, you get great returns. You get preferential tax treatment as it grows, all kinds of fun stuff. But what I don't like about 401ks and why I think it's overstuffed is I think people avoid paying them or using them because they have to pay tax. And if you avoid what could be, and a lot of people's balance sheets, their largest asset, well, shoot, how are you going to have any fun? How are you going to go out and have some fun when it comes to your retirement? If you're like, I don't want to touch my 401k, I got to pay tax on it. Like, you're always going to pay tax on it. You or your kids are going to pay tax on this. So just accept it, have a plan, start taking money out. And because it's overstuffed, a lot of times they live around it and do less in retirement. And then they're like, we'll get to it later when we have our RMDs at 73, maybe we'll do it. It's like, that's like 10 years from now. Like, this is like the fun time. This is when you should be rocking and rolling and doing the trips, the African safaris and the Alaska cruises and spoiling the grandkids and just out and about. And I don't understand that logic, but 401ks, that's a residual of, effect that most people haven't done. And if I was going to add an envelope, I hope everyone here writes this down. And, let's do the experience envelope. We're going to put money into creating life experiences and memories. You call it the memory envelope, whatever you think is more appropriate. And I'm going to build memories every year with my family and with my friends. And if I'm not doing that, I'm missing out on what life's all about. That is actually the goal of life, is connection. So if you think having a bunch of zeros in your account's going to, make you happy on your last day when you're on your deathbed, you're wrong. It's the life that you live, the experiences you share, that actually makes life worth living and makes retirement worth having. So if everyone starts to add an envelope of like, I'm going to create some more life experiences and roll the dice a little bit more. And if you have a little issue where your financial advisor's pushing back, give us a call. Maybe we'll give you the confidence you need through our roadmap for retirement, through our income forecast, to show you that you're not going to run out of money, to empower and embolden you to create more memories. Stop worrying about dividends and start worrying about memories. And by doing that, I think it takes on a whole different aspect on how you start enjoying your money, because I think for most people, it's stressful. They don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do, invest. I don't know what the taxes. And it should be a pot of joy, not a pot of headaches. And I think that is our goal, and our job as retirement planners is to start making it fun again. Let's make retirement fun again, not a bunch of work.
If there's an envelope there you want to overstuff, let's overstuff the memory envelope in your retirement years. So, Greg, this is kind of your area here as being an estate planner, and you know this. There are about 63 million people in the United States that act as caregivers. Some of them are paid. Many of them are not, as they're taking care of a parent or a spouse. And the number of caregivers in our country is up 45% in the last 10 years. And many of these caregivers, this is a tough job, folks. They report a lot of stress, depression, even declines in their own health. And Greg, you and I talk about having a plan for long-term care. This might be one of the main reasons that this would come up, is I don't want my children to have to go through this. I don't want them to have to take care of me and go through all of this, probably when they're going into their retirement years. We have to make some kind of arrangements for somebody else to take care of us, and that is not an easy decision. It's also not an easy conversation, is it?
No, this is the 800-pound gorilla in the room, right? This is the avoid it, put it under the rug. No one wants to talk about going to a nursing home. They don't want to say the word nursing home. They want to think about a loved one going in a nursing home. I mean, this is a tough topic, and it is, Tim and I built Aler Stallings estate planning, another law firm. This is what we dealt with every week, right? Like, this was our job, was to deal with nursing home crises or planning ahead of time. And we're very familiar with all the benefit programs, Medicare, Medicaid, aid attendance, veterans benefits. All of these things compound and kind of play into this. But the emotional caregiver part is what makes this so hard. When you think about it, when you're a spouse, you're going to be the spouse. You wear the spouse hat. You're engaging, you're caring. But now all of a sudden, your loved one needs care. So what happens? The spouse hat gets taken off, and you have to put the caregiver hat on. And all day and all night, maybe you don't get to have that connection with your spouse anymore. You are now the person that's responsible for their health and their care and their safety. And it's a completely different role. I mean, and it starts to weigh and change on people. We see a lot at home when spouses try to take care of other spouses at the house, their health declines, right? Like there's endless studies of showing why you should probably get help in the house, whether it be home care or get them in assisted living or get additional things, because it's going to compound both people because of the stress it puts on people, because you can't help them. At times you feel guilty, like you said, depression. And the same goes for a kid. You used to be a kid and you get to go enjoy mom and dad. And all of a sudden, when you go see mom and dad, it's all, taking care of them. It's all work. And that's not to say that we shouldn't do it and we shouldn't care for our parents, but there's a lot of guilt involved. And the way I equate it, it's like being a business partner or owner with a spouse or a parent. When you're working together, you worked for a parent. If anybody's ever worked for a parent, thank goodness I never have. But for those of you that have, it's hard because it's like, are you being dad now or are you being boss? And now this is, well, am I the caregiver now or I'm the son or the daughter? And I think that is a really, really hard position to put people into. So people, well, Greg, how do you get through this? You have a plan, right? The problem with most nursing home crises is that it's all reactive in a state of complete panic. No one's done anything. So what ends up happening is everyone jumps in. Everyone's got an idea. Someone's always a nurse or married to a nurse, and then they know what's going on, even though they're like a nurse that has nothing to do with aging geriatric care. And it makes the whole situation tough because everyone's bereaved. They're attaching a lot of emotion to it. Like, I'll pay for it. I'll do it. And then it's like, well, no, you want to do this. And, it's a lot of family counseling. So if we get ahead of this and say, all right, how do mom and dad want to age? And what happens if you can't age at home anymore? All right, well, then we got to have a home care provider. Well, like, do you know how much a home care provider is for unskilled care, let alone skilled care? Because Medicare is not going to pay for that. And Medicaid's not going to pay for that. So when you start playing those things out, you're like, oh my gosh, that's like $100,000 a year. Yeah. Like, that's how much that is. Are you okay with that? Is that part of your plan? Because it's fine if it is. We just got to factor that in because we know the numbers, right? There's studies that come out all the time. The fact we're living longer is where these studies come from. And that's why these big jumps happen, Randy, is because we're living longer. It's, the chances of us needing help to age increases exponentially. So this is getting to the point where it's like there's a 60% chance or higher of being over the age of 65, needing long-term care help. And if out of a couple, it's almost a statistical certainty that one member of the couple will need some help to age in retirement. And then you have to ask, well, what about assisted living facilities? What about skilled facilities? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to live? How do you want to enjoy those latter years, independent living? And if you have these things in place, you can actually age in place longer because they're set up to help ensure there's not falls or health issues or other things that usually compound and escalate a lot of these problems. But if you don't have those conversations and those hard conversations early, then you only have the options that are right in front of you. And a lot of times they're not very good ones, Randy. So as part of our planning, we do a long-term care piece to our roadmap where we sit down with our estate planning and elder law attorneys and just go through the options. Start having the conversation. You may not be ready to make the decisions, but let's start having some conversations, not to go in a nursing home, but what happens if someone goes in, right? Like, that's the hard part. We're not planning to go in. We're planning what if someone goes in so that you're not flat-footed and disrupting an entire family unit because no one made any decisions during mom and dad's life.
And isn't that exactly why we come to a retirement planner, to handle the what ifs of our next 20, 25, 30 years? And we talk a lot on this show about fees in the financial industry. Now, this, I think, is a different kind of fee. There's a book out there that you may have heard of called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And this quote is in that book. Volatility is a fee, not a fine. He's talking about being in the stock market, okay? Now, I can choose my financial advisor by how much the fee is. I can't choose the stock market as in along the same line. So, Phil, talk to me a little bit about that. Do you look at the volatility of the market as a fee? How do we choose how much we want to be in that market? How do you make those decisions?
Yeah, that makes sense, right? The psychology of it's the cost if you want a 20% year. But it's also sometimes the cost for the 30% losses. And I think in our life, like, people are comfortable paying fees for certain things. Like, there's points in our life where we are comfortable taking on that volatility to have some of those bigger gaining years. But then there's also points in our life where we're not willing to pay that fee. The way we look at it is totally different, though. It's starting in reverse, right? It's really looking at, do we need those types of returns? Do we need that type of risk to do all the things that we want to do in retirement? And more times than not, when we start breaking down a portfolio, we see it's like you could make 0, 3, 5% on your investments and do all the things that you want to do in retirement. We don't need to risk, our best decade in our 60s and vacations and just to make 7, 8, 9%. Right. The reality is most folks have done the hard work. The hard work is saving on the front end. They've done the 401ks. They've done the savings on the side. They have enough to do everything they want in retirement. Why take the risk if we don't need to? Greg's famous analogy is, why drive 80 miles per hour to the grocery store? Nobody does it because you don't need to, right? You're still going to get your groceries. Nothing's going to change your day. Why speed if you don't need to? Is kind of that approach. So first, it's starting off like, let's figure out, okay, how much risk do we need to take? What types of returns do we need to get through retirement? And we use that, both a combination of our market risk report that breaks down all of your current investments to tell you the type of risk you're taking now, but also our income forecast. And it'll show, based on your income, your expenses, what you have saved, what types of returns do you need to make it through retirement? We'll look at a 0, 3, 5, 7% return and show you if you have these fairly modest to fairly aggressive returns, what type of lifestyle can you live and how much money you're going to have at the end of it.
Well, I think that you've heard the term many times, if you're going to play in the market, well, that's just the price of admission, your financial advisor would say to you. Well, maybe you don't want to pay that price. Maybe you want to pay a lower price. And that is what we want to have that conversation when we sit down and build that roadmap for retirement for you. How much do you want to play in that market? You know, are you a person who has had 90% in the market all these years and now you want to have 10% in the market for your retirement years? That's okay. Let's figure out what's right for you. Give us a call. Give us a look on our website. We'll put together a roadmap for retirement for you. GetYourRoadmap.com is our website. GetYourRoadmap.com. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.